Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the joint public workshop for the minimum flows and levels priority list and schedules for the CFWI area. Sorry, we're getting a little bit of a late start. We have had a last-minute computer glitch, but just wanted to welcome everybody, and we'll go ahead and get started. As you may be aware, this is being conducted by 3 water management districts, as you can see here on the screen. And so I'm going to go ahead and just prompt through the general comments. And I just wanted to let you know that my name is Don Medellin. I'm a principal scientist with South Florida Water Management, and then Clay Corsi with St. John's River Water Management District will be the presenter, and then Doug Leeper with Southwest Florida Water Management District will be the presenter on that portion of the presentation. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and move forward, and just so you all know how to communicate, this is a Zoom meeting, so you can use the raised hand feature when we get to the public comment portion of the presentation, which will be toward the end. And you can raise your hand, and then I will recognize you as a name, and then we will unmute you. And if you're using a telephone, you would use *9 to raise your hand, so we can recognize you as wanting to speak or make a public comment, and then *6 will mute and unmute you. So just wanted to kind of relay that to everybody up front. So here is the agenda for the meeting. We have with South Florida this morning, Sky Nostein, and as well as Natalie Kraft, and we have a couple other members of the public here, and other than that, everybody is remote. So with that, here is the agenda, and as I indicated, instead of Andrew Sutherland, Clay Corsi will be presenting for St. John's River Water Management, and then toward the end, we'll take stakeholder comments, and then with that, we're going to go ahead and move forward to the presentation here. So just to give you a little bit of background about the statutory directive for MFLs, this is really what minimum flows and levels are about, is identifying the limits beyond which additional water withdrawals would cause significant harm to the ecology or the water resources of an area. And it is a state law. It's required by water management districts to establish MFLs. And they are established for, different types of water bodies, for springs, rivers, lakes, wetlands, as well as aquifers. There's also a statutory directive for reservations, and the reservations reserve from use or from allocation water that's needed in locations and quantities for such seasons in the year that's needed for the protection of fish and wildlife or for public health and safety. And the district also include water reservations and MFLs on the priority water body list. And and with most reservations, usually there's an identification through the process of whether existing legal users, how they were incorporated into the reservation process, and if there were any such impacts. Typically, the existing legal users, there is an assessment of existing legal uses, and so that determination is made through the technical process. Regarding district priority list and meetings, statutory requirements, the prioritization that we have is based on the importance of waters within the state or region, and the existence or the potential for significant harm to water bodies. It also includes waters experiencing or reasonably expected to experience adverse impacts, and as you look forward to future demands, that's one of the things that MFLs require, is looking into a future horizon, a 20-year horizon, to see what those potential impacts would potentially be. And then districts also do a voluntary independent scientific peer review, and those peer reviews are identified usually early in the process, and reservations are also identified as part of the list, as I indicated. And then this last bullet that you see here is a list of water bodies that have the potential to be affected by withdrawals in an adjacent water management district are also identified. And so those are usually clearly identified under the priority list, and there's coordination between districts when those cross-district impacts do potentially occur. Regarding the 2021 draft priority list and schedule, each district is required to develop their own priority list and schedule as required by statute. And then they, once those lists are developed, they are presented to the governing boards of each respective district, and then the boards approve those priority lists to be submitted to DEP. And then DEP, we have to have all those lists directly to DEP, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, by November 15th of each year. So this is an annual thing that occurs. And as part of this public process, the districts are always seeking stakeholder input and comment through the process. And you can see here when the written comments would be due by for St. John's River Water Management by October 1st, for Southwest Florida Water Management District, September 7th. And for our district, South Florida Water Management District, it would be September 30th. And there's the contact there as well. Just a little bit of background about the Central Florida Water Initiative. It is a collaborative process with DEP, the 3 water management districts, Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Affairs, along with regional public water supply utilities and other stakeholders. This has been ongoing for a while, and it covers a 5-county area, including Orange, Osceola, Polk, Seminole, and Southern Lake counties, as you can see in the map. And then it essentially evolved from the previous effort, which was the Central Florida Coordination Area. A little more about the Central Florida Water Initiative. The good news is the rule was just adopted in June 21st of this year, and it's listed in 6241. And the new rules govern consumptive uses of water within the Central Florida Water Initiative region area. And in 62-41.304 parents 1, there is a requirement to hold prior to this public workshop for the 3 districts to meet with DEP, and that meeting did occur on August the 31st. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Clay Coursey. And Clay, welcome, and we're going to turn it over to you for the presentation. Can you hear me okay, Clay?
I hear you perfectly clear. Thank you.
Perfect.
Can we move on to the next slide here? Thank you very much. So a few changes here from the St. John's River Water Management District from the 2021 to the 2022 proposed list that'll go to our governing board is that we're shifting some of our systems here about a year, moving the ones that were scheduled in 2021 out to 2022. Same for a few of them in 2022 to 2023. And then similarly for 2023 to 2024. Then finally, I'm pulling Lake Apopka off of the priority list at this time. Can we go to the next slide, please? Then here is a view of what we'll be submitting to our governing board for approval to go to DEP for our priority list for 2022. And that's it as far as St. John's goes at this time.
Okay. And with that, we're going to turn it over to Doug Leeper. Doug, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Don. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Doug Leeper. I'm the Minimum Flows and Levels Program Lead. I'm going to run through the Southwest Florida Water Management District draft party list and schedule. It has been presented to the board, our governing board, and will be presented as a final list, pending any changes that we make or suggestions we receive that lead to changes in October. Next slide, please, Don. So I wanted to mention that I'm going to talk a little bit about our current list and our proposed 2021 list, and both of those lists are currently available on the district website. Next. So with regard to our current priority list and schedule, I wanted to note that numerous water bodies scheduled for 2020, I wanted to provide a little status update on all those, including the minimum flows and levels reevaluations that were completed for Crossbar 225 wetland, a wetland in the northern Tampa Bay area, a Lower Peace River minimum flow reevaluation, which was recently completed, reevaluations for lakes Cypress, Half Moon, Jackson, and Strawberry in the northern Tampa Bay area. Technical work's been completed and rulemaking ongoing, expected to be completed soon, in the next month or so. And then 2 lakes in the northern Tampa Bay region that we previously identified on our current list for reevaluation, Lakes Garden and Linda in the northern Tampa Bay region, are going to be reprioritized off our list and revisited at some point in the future as necessary. We determined it wasn't critical to reevaluate those lakes at this time relative to the other work that we needed to accomplish. Schedule for 2021 on our current priority list and schedule is the development of new minimum flows for the lower segment of Shell Creek, the lower portion of our district, and we've completed the technical work on that, and we'll be hosting a public workshop sometime this fall in anticipation of initiating and completing rulemaking later this year or maybe early into 2022. In addition, we have several water bodies scheduled for minimum flows and levels work in 2022 and 2023 on our current list. Those are listed at the bottom of the slide. And they include 3 lakes, North Wales, Tulane, and Verona. Those are all being reevaluated. A minimum aquifer level established for the southern water use caution area is being reevaluated. And we're developing minimum flows for the Little Manatee River, the Braden River, the Manatee River, Charlie Creek, Horse Creek, and all work is ongoing for all these systems, and we are not they're all on schedule. We're not anticipating any changes. I want to take a minute here to talk a little bit about the coding that I've used here on my slides. The water bodies are listed in a white font, but those that are listed in a blue font are water bodies that fall within the Central Florida Water Initiative area, or in the case of the Southern Water Use Caution minimum aquifer level, fall outside of the CFWI area, but are impacted by withdrawals that occur within the CFWI area. And in that case of the Southern Water Use Caution area minimum aquifer level, that minimum level, which is being reevaluated, has previously been used as a constraint for CFWI planning purposes. So those water bodies identified in blue font are pertinent or germane to this discussion of the Central Florida Water Initiative priority water bodies. In addition, I've underlined some of the water bodies. The underlining represents or helps identify water bodies that are potentially affected by withdrawals in districts other than the Southwest Florida Water Management District. In other words, they're close to the boundaries, and withdrawals in other water management districts may affect water levels or flows in those systems. So we'll be paying special attention to those systems as we work on them and coordinating very closely with the other respective water management districts. So that, I just wanted to highlight the coding that I'll be using, and I'll talk a little bit more about it as I proceed through my slides. Next slide, please, Don. Still on our current list, I wanted to mention that we completed, or we're nearing completion of a large number of lake reevaluations that weren't previously identified on our priority list and schedule. They're unscheduled minimum flow level reevaluations. And we've completed technical work on all of these lakes listed here, and we're nearing completion of rulemaking for some slight changes to the minimum levels established for these lakes. They were undertaken mostly for water bodies in the northern Tampa Bay region, and they were undertaken primarily to make some adjustments to the levels based upon things we've learned about appropriate establishment of minimum flows and levels in that region. And the work was completed to support ongoing recovery strategy assessment. And at some point later at another meeting, or if you want to call me, I can talk to you more about the recovery strategy success we've had in the northern Tampa Bay region. Next slide, please. So on to our proposed priority list and schedule. We're not proposing any changes for the water bodies that are currently identified for establishment of minimum flows and levels or reevaluation of minimum flows and levels in 2022. And they include.
Doug, are you still talking?
Yes, I am. You're not hearing me?
We can't hear you, Doug. Are you there?
I can hear.
I'm here. Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you, Doug.
Yes, the panelists
Devon,
can
can
hear
you
you.
see,
I'll try the chat here.
everybody can hear Doug but me, Devon.
Yes, I can hear him too, but you're not hearing me. I'm texting Nick. Oh.
Can't hear Devon either?
Pause, folks, here for a minute
I
while
want to text
we
Devon.
try and iron out this technical difficulty.
I just got a chat that they can hear Doug, but I cannot. I'm not sure if you all can hear me, but if you would just bear with us for just a moment.
Why is it? Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah. Jeez, can you hear me better?
Okay, I'm testing through Zoom again. Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, so we're back in business.
I think so. Doug, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. I'll
Okay,
proceed then. I'll
Yeah.
reemphasize this slide is for our 2022 proposed priority water bodies for minimum flows and levels development in 2022. There are no changes. Again, we plan on reevaluating 3 lakes in the southern water use caution area portion of the Southwest Florida Water Management District, including 2 in Highlands County, Verona, and Tulane, which may be affected by cross-boundary effects, and then also North Wales, which may be affected by cross-boundary district withdrawals. And North Wales is within Polk County in the CFWI area. We're also working on developing new minimum flows for the Little Manatee River, both the upper freshwater segment and the lower estuarine segment. And we expect to present proposed minimum flows to our governing board here in the next month or so, and we'll be then entering a peer review process for those minimum flows. Next slide, please. For 2023, we're not changing much. Again, we continue to schedule the reevaluation of the Southern Water Use Caution Area saltwater intrusion minimum aquifer level, as well as minimum flow development for Braden River, Charlie Creek, Horse Creek, and the lower segment of the Manatee River. We have added 3 new lake reevaluations to party list and schedule for 2023. And again, these are to support our Southern Water Use Caution Area assessment or evaluation, and it includes 3 lakes in Polk County within the CFWI area, Lakes Aurora, Easy, and Eva. Next slide. 2024 is a new year for our party list and schedule, which extends out 3 years. So these are all new additions, and we'll be completing reevaluations in that year for 5 additional lakes in the Southern Water Use Caution Area, including several, Eagle, McLeod, and Wales within the CFWI area. And we'll also be completing new minimum flows for the lower segment of the Withlacoochee River and 3 upper segments of the Withlacoochee River, with the uppermost segment at the very upper end of the watershed extending into Polk County, which is within the CFWI area. It's therefore highlighted in blue. Next slide. That may be all I have, Don. Yep. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks, Doug. Glad we got rid of that little glitch. For South Florida Water Management, we do not have any water bodies. This is the location of the website that shows the priority water body list. So if you're interested in seeing what's on a priority list outside of CFWI, because there are no water bodies proposed for the 2021 list within the Central Florida Water Initiative. However, just to give you a little background, if you haven't been following the rural development efforts over the last several years, the Kissimmee River and Chain of Lakes Water Reservation was recently adopted in March 21st of this year. And it is a regionally significant water body covering 172,500 acres, most of which is within the CFWI area. And it also includes the major water bodies, the upper chain of lakes, the headwater lakes, the Kissimmee River and floodplain, and protects public investment for the Kissimmee River restoration of nearly $800 million. So I'm just going to use this brief time to kind of go over this newly adopted rule because it's very complex. The new rule essentially incorporated almost 30 pages of new rules. It was a very long rule development process for multiple reasons, but we did get it adopted, and there were probably between 30 and 35 different stakeholder meetings to deal with the draft rule and rule changes as we went through that rule development process. And so we got a lot of public feedback, and all that was valuable and good in coming up with the final rule. So just to give you a little bit of background about the Kissimmee River and Chain of Lakes, this is just an overall map showing the location. The purple area at the top is the upper chain of lakes, and the gold area, I'll go into the regulatory components of this just ever so briefly in just a moment. But I wanted to kind of highlight where the Kissimmee River Restoration Project is located. And so you can see in this inset map where that restoration area is located. And just to give you a little background about the Kissimmee River Restoration, the C-38 canal that you can see on the slide to the right, the picture to the right, is what the whole entire river floodplain. This canal went through the entire riverine system and really created a lot of damaging effects to this system. And so you can see the form of C-38 canal now in the restored portions of the river. And so it's been a really big success story for the South Florida Water Management District. And so you can kind of see when the whole system gets inundated in the floodplain, you can't even really hardly even see a lot of the areas where the historic C-38 canal was located. And it has quite a bit of fish and wildlife associated with it, more than 50 different fish species, multiple wading bird, as well as duck species, amphibians and reptiles, as well as mammals. And it also supports a really world-class bass fishery. We always brag about the fishery up in the upper chain of lakes because there was one catch where they had five fish that weighed 42 pounds. And by any fisherman's standard, that is a heck of a catch. But the important thing is when we developed this water reservation, we tried to make sure in the restoration goals that were associated with the Kissimmee River, we tried to make sure we're maintaining the hydrologic requirements, and that was key to, sustaining all of these species that you see in this slide. So just a little bit about the water reservation line, and this is associated with the upper end, the upper chain of lakes region. This is just an example within the alligator chain of lakes, and I'm just going to walk you through the different portions. The blue area that you see in this graphic represents the 25th to 75th percentile of historical flows from 1972 to 2019, and the high stages really, protect, inundation and make sure that plain communities don't shift to more of an upland community, and that upland encroachment does not happen. There's also a gradual recession line associated with this. The black is, let me explain, the black is the water reservation line, whereas the gold line is the regulation schedule that's been established for many of these lakes for decades now. And so the Fish and Wildlife line is developed on these parameters. So the gradual recession actually helps to maintain water under many of the birds' nests that we have nesting. For example, snail kites in the East Lake Toho and Lake Toho, we actually have a super population of snail kites. And during the peak breeding season, it's very important that those areas underneath the nest are inundated to prevent predation of those species in the nest. And so then we also have the lower stage that's designed to, protect the little zone habitat and the lower edges, the lower boundaries in the lake. And then we also have this ascension rate, which is roughly about a foot per month. But that gradual ascension rate helps to protect apple snails, alligator nests, and multiple other species. So that's just kind of a rundown of the water reservation line and why it's important from a habitat and wildlife species standpoint. Now I'm going to go into the rule language ever so briefly, and this is just an overview of the rule language. As I indicated, it is a very complicated rule, and so we have some contacts toward the end that you can touch base with any of our staff, and we can help you through interpreting portions of the rule if you need additional help. One of the things you'll see in this map to the right is the S65 structure, and that's right at the county boundary here at it's the Osceola County Okeechobee boundary, and so portions of this boundary, the reason the S65 is important because that actually demarcates the beginning of the Kissimmee River itself. And so one of the things we found, our scientists in doing the evaluation determined that an average annual discharge at S65 should not be reduced more than 5% from either individual or cumulative withdrawals. And so that is a very important component of this rule and is part of making sure the restoration hydrology occurs, because it's not only the physical form of changing and filling in the canal, but it's also the restoration hydrology, the restoration component of that restoration plan is critically important as well. And so these three lakes that you see above the green circle, which are Cypress, Hatch-Nahal, and Kissimmee, those three lakes actually store a lot of the water needed to provide the driving head of water to inundate the floodplain during the wet season. And so, let me go back for just a minute. This headwater lakes, and all this gold that you see, all of the water will be reserved as part of the rule. And then in the upper chain of lakes, water will be reserved up to the proposed water reservation line, which is the graphic I showed you as an example. Each lake has a specific water reservation line and a different regulation schedule. So that water reservation line has a daily stage that has to be met before withdrawals can occur. So again, just an overview, all the surface water to specific water reservation stages will be reserved in this purple area at the top, and the Kissimmee River headwater revitalization lakes, these three lakes in the middle, as well as the floodplain for the river, will all be reserved. All the surface water will be reserved. And then we also have these gray areas in this graphic that you see. These gray areas are what they call contributing water bodies. And the contributing water bodies are also protected to make sure that the reservation water bodies themselves fill up and aren't impacted by withdrawals within those tributary systems. And groundwater is also protected for the superficial aquifer system adjacent to these reservation and contributing water bodies. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an example. For example, here I have to the right, when you come in for an application, you have to make sure at S65 here that you're not reducing the average annual flows individually or cumulatively by greater than 5%. So that happens at the time an applicant comes in to submit an application to demonstrate that. And the tool that's used to demonstrate that is this UK Ops model. And so that is the Upper Kissimmee Operations Simulation Model. And that model is incorporated into the rule, and you have to use this specific version to do that evaluation. And so what I wanted to talk about in this example is if a withdrawal happens up at this red arrow, say in Shingle Creek, some of the constraints that you have to deal with after the permit is issued is the downstream constraint in the receiving water body, reservation water body itself. So you have to make sure that before you do a withdrawal here, that the stage in the lake is above the Fish and Wildlife line. That's the black line that I showed you in the previous slide. And then in addition to that, you also have to do another downstream check in Lake Okeechobee to make sure that that the lake is actually discharging to one of the estuaries. And so these two checks have to occur on a daily basis before withdrawals can occur in the upper watershed. And part of the reason that we have this criteria the way it is that the water availability is very ephemeral, meaning that it's not always available, and it's usually available at infrequent times. And the 1 in 10 level of certainty that we typically authorize with permits does not apply to the permits within this area associated with this criteria for the reservation. So some of the staff to talk to in the future, in addition to Tony and I have been, at the district for quite some time. But Tony and I are both retiring soon at the end of this year. And so Sky and Natalie will be taking the lead and taking the reins of helping you through any questions you have about the rule development or the rule itself for Kissimmee reservations. And we also have regulatory staff, Nick, Tani, and Simon Sutherland, that can help you with that as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead to the stakeholder comments here. Again, as I indicated in the previous slide, for St. John's, we need stakeholder comments by October the 1st, and you can submit those to Andrew Sutherland. For Southwest Florida, we will need the written comments by September the 7th. And that should be October 1st, 2021 for St. John's. That's a mistake. For South Florida Water Management, it should be September 30th. We'll need your written comments by that time. And so these are the governing board dates that each district is taking the priority list to. And again, this is another opportunity for the public to engage with each water management district and provide his comments and feedback about the priority list. So for St. John's, it's October 12th. Southwest Florida, it's October 19th. And for South Florida, it's October 14th. And those are the locations. So with that, we're going to go ahead and move into the general public comment portion of the workshop and meeting here. And so if you're using Zoom on your computer, you can use the raise hand feature in Zoom to raise your hand, and then I'll acknowledge your name, and then we will unmute you from the webinar side, and then that will give you the opportunity to talk. If you are participating by phone, to raise your hand, you have to use *9, and then once we recognize you, you'll have to use *6 to unmute yourself, and then mute yourself after your public comment. So with that, we'll go ahead and see if we have any public comments here. Okay, I have one hand raised. I do not have a name, but the phone number is 407-349-3900. If you want to push *6, you can unmute yourself. Devon, can you see that phone number on your end?
Yes, that
Hey,
number.
Don. Yes.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and identify yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me, Don? It's Rob Dennis, Liquid Solutions Group.
Hey, Rob, how you doing? Good to hear from you.
Doing well. And question for Clay. I missed his gregarious nature this morning, and I wanted to ask, are you guys planning to identify cross-district boundaries on your priority list this year?
Yes, it should be listed there on the list. I thought that was on the slide. Let me double check, Rob, and see if that's something that was overlooked.
It's not on the website or on the slides. So I'm just following up on it, and we can talk offline later, or you can repost it. That's the only question I had.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. All right. Next, I have Angel Martin. Angel, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Couple of questions. One for Doug Leeper. Doug, when you talked about the reevaluation of the SWACA saltwater intrusion minimum aquifer level, I was wondering, can you talk a little bit more about that? What additional data are being used, or techniques or models to do the re-evaluation? And you know, your slide says aquifer level. I assume there's multiple aquifer levels that are involved here with the re-evaluation.
Sure, I'll try to address your question, Angel. This is Doug Leeper. Good to hear from you. So yeah, we established a minimum aquifer level for the Southern Water Use Caution Area a number of years ago. And the minimum aquifer level identifies a target, you know, a minimum aquifer level, a water level elevation in the upper Florida aquifer. And it's based upon an average, you know, weighted average, I think, of 10 different wells in the region, what's known as the most impacted area of the Southern Water Use Caution Area. And the most impacted area is a coastal region south of Tampa Bay and Hillsborough and Sarasota and maybe Manatee County. It's a coastal region of the southern water use caution area, which is basically the southern half of the Southwest Florida Water Management District. But the most impacted area, the SWCA-SWIMAL, saltwater intrusion minimum upper level, was established and has been in rule for a number of years, and it was developed to maintain a rate of saltwater intrusion at a historic condition, basically to draw the line in the sand, speaking as a non-hydrologist here, in the rock, basically. So it's been established for a number of years. When it was first established, it was not being met. In recent years, through improved hydrologic conditions and the regulations that have been in place that address withdrawals in the southern water use caution area, we've seen a rebound in that region, and the target elevation has been achieved for the last couple of years, maybe 3, I don't remember, 2 or 3. To fully meet the minimum aquifer level, there's a requirement for a certain number of years, and we're potentially going to meet that soon, but we haven't quite achieved the target elevation the full number of years to say we've met the minimum aquifer level. But that's a description of the SWCA-SWIMAL. We're reevaluating because it was established quite a number of years ago. And so in that intervening time period, we have new data, we have new water level data, we have new hydrologic data, we have new water withdrawal data, and we have new well water chemistry data. All that data that has accumulated since the original minimum aquifer level was developed, being looked at, used for the reevaluation, as well as some fine tuning or refinements of the models used for modeling groundwater levels in the region. I don't know the specific names of the models, Angel.
Yeah.
You can contact me offline and I'll put you in touch with someone who could,
But you're still talking about doing an average of like 10 wells or so many wells.
Yeah, well, that's what we have now. That's how
Right.
the aquifer level is established now, and that's how it's evaluated now. And I anticipate the new minimum level, if it's revised, will look something like the old one. But,
Okay.
We're still in the process of working that out right now. So hopefully that
Okay.
answers your question.
Okay, that gives you it gives you a little bit more information, because usually, when you're talking about saltwater intrusion, you're talking about, a line, a broad area of intrusion, and one water level, one number easily doesn't, cover all that.
Right. So the minimum aquifer levels are spatially weighted, average, based upon, I think, 10 wells that are located south of Tampa Bay in the coastal the counties, and it addresses basically, the most impacted area.
Okay.
So when folks like you and other hydrologists are doing groundwater flow modeling,
Sure.
you can look at fluxes across. You can look at water levels at the individual wells. You can look at the aggregated statistical average of the wells, and you can look at fluxes at defined boundary zones, for example, for the most impacted area. And all those things are looked at, when regulatory staff assesses existing and future withdrawals and their potential impact on the most impacted area.
Hey, Angel, this is Ron Basso. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Ron, go ahead. Yeah.
Just to add on to what Doug said, we're going to be redoing the solid transport modeling.
Okay.
Originally 20 years ago.
Right.
So Jason Patterson's the project manager of that. You can get with me or him offline, and we can talk to you about that. But that's
okay. So you're going to be redoing are you going to be doing something like CWAT or just redoing the?
Yeah, I believe it's CWAT, the new code that they're using. Hydrogeologic did the original, but
sure.
We can get offline if you're interested in that.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Ron.
And the second question I had is for Don, Mr. Medini. On one of your slides on the Kissimmee, on the permit criteria and constraints, you had listed there, you had constraints on groundwater and you have the superficial aquifer system. So am I to understand there are no constraints on the upper Florida aquifer for permits in that one area when you're talking about the groundwater constraints?
Well, keep in mind the superficial that's regulated under the Kissimmee Reservation rule is just associated with withdrawals adjacent to a contributing water body or a reservation water body itself. And really, we are not regulating the lower aquifer levels because that's part of what CFWI is doing globally. They're looking at the and doing regulating the water uses within the whole region.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is that just for this particular case, the superficial system is the only one that's being really looked at for this specific case.
Yeah, for the Kissimmee Reservation and Chain of Lakes rules, we are
Okay.
specifically making sure that those water bodies, that we're not taking water away that's needed for fish and wildlife. And so
Oh,
it's
okay.
usually just those withdrawals that are immediately adjacent to those water bodies that
Oh,
would be of concern.
Is there? Would you happen to know? Is there a significant amount of groundwater pumpage from the superficial aquifer in that area at all?
No, but we're trying to make sure that most of the withdrawals, a lot of them are surface water withdrawals.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much groundwater, but as the areas develop, there is that risk that there'll be additional groundwater withdrawals in the future. There's always that potential, so we wanted to make sure that we had a rule that was proactive and looked at that to make sure that the fish and wildlife were going to be protected in the long run.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, if anybody else on the Zoom webinar has a question, again, if you could use the raise your hand feature and we'll recognize you. And I'll ask, is there anybody in the room here that wants to make a public comment? And if you could identify yourself and go ahead and speak.
Do I come up to the?
No, you can just sit right there because there's a microphone right there above you.
Okay, hi, my name is David Ballard Geddes Jr. I live on Georgia Avenue in Palm Harbor. I live in the Swiftmud, Southwest Florida Water Management District region. As I understand it, during the Roosevelt era, in the mid to late 1940s, the entire St. Johns River Valley was systematically ditched and drained. Over 800 miles worth of canals were blasted in the Everglades alone, in effect drying out our God-given wetlands. Today, one of the world's largest harvesters of cypress mulch is just east of Hollow Paw, less than 30 miles from here, desecrating, laying bare our God-given wetlands. The proactive development between St. Cloud and Melbourne will soon pave over the entire St. John's Kissimmee River junction. As time goes on, I see this body of government as being here not to govern, but to, in effect, aggregate the water supply, to indirectly undermine, and as George Washington proscribes in his farewell address, to profoundly penetrate, to establish covert, insidious, sinister, and pernicious motives, stating that us, the people, are being given a useful lesson on our heads, and to capture the water supply in Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, manifesting, birthing water jurisdictions under the 14th Amendment, recognized as an actual invading force, seen as a ship of war in Article 1, Section 10, as an actual war in the Fifth Amendment, free to levy war as written in the Declaration of Independence, and to directly tax the civilian population as enumerated from Article 1, Section 2, using Hamilton's first Constitution as a medium. protecting, conserving, caring for, and preserving our most vital resource, water, is not what our founding forefathers had envisioned. Uniformly bankrupting, aggregating the water supply, as based again on Article 1, Section 8, is the objective of this Constitution. Contriving, imposing such maritime law upon parochial waters is unwarranted. Constitutional piracy is a chargeable offense. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your public comment. Any other public comments? With that, I do not see any more hands raised. So I will, at this point, I think we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and just wanted to say thank you to everybody for participating online for the Zoom call and the webinar for CFWI, and look forward to many other opportunities engaging with many of our stakeholders. Thank you and have a great day.